is reflected inside of the Trump International just in front of us. Second tallest building in the city, dating back from 2009, so this would be a contemporary design. Designed by Adrian Smith. Born and bred Chicagoan, loves the city, loves to show it off. He uses his building to do that. Something known as contextualism, which you see in contemporary design, building that mimics its surroundings. The glass on here is reflective. You can't help but see the buildings that surround it. And also the building has terraces, little patios that kind of jut out to either side. Those are meant to level off with the roof lines of buildings that surround it. The first one with the Wrigley, that second patio would be with this skinny building on the left. That's covered in terracotta. Right next to the London House, it's called Madden Tower, the Gothic Rocket. Top floor of that building, 9 feet across. And then the last patio on the Trump is meant to represent or line up with the black building right next to it. Right hand side, you're gonna see the AMA Plaza. Formerly known as the IBM building, one of the last designs of Mr. Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. Mies van der Rohe, considered to be the father of modernism. He was a director for the School of Bauhaus in Germany. The school of thought seen as being extreme by the Nazi Party. They closed their doors. He was one of the first people to come up with this idea or steer towards the idea of less is more. Less decoration, more building, right? He came here and taught at IIT. And he gave way to a new generation of architects. Our students responsible for these two corn-top buildings that sit right next to it. These two buildings right here make up Marina City. The buildings are a mixture of residential, very Western wall, but it's more than that. Multi-purpose. Look inside that building, you want to rent a boat, go downstairs, you can get an electric boat for the day. You're hungry? Well, you got some world-class cuisine at your doorstep. Amazing restaurants like Smith & Wollensky and some. And if you're bored, there's a House of Blues here. Go listen to some live music. You want to go bowling? There's a bowling alley. You want to go work out? There's a fitness center for the people that live here. This is a city within a city. That was the purpose of it. Starting in the 1950s, what you saw here in Chicago was an urban sprawl. People started to leave the city, moving on to the suburbs where it's a lot cheaper to live. You get more property. Virtual over design Marina City as a way to combat that. Getting all these things at their doorstep, they come back into the city not just to work, but to live as well. We're going to see that same idea used later on in one of these other designs. But coming up on the right-hand side, just in front of us, you're going to see this red building where the clock tower says Whirlpool on it. That's the Reed Murdoch Center. A design of George C. Nimitz, but a good example of the Prairie School of Architecture made famous by Frank Lloyd Wright. With that style, you see a lot of elements that are reminiscent of the prairie landscape. It's all about the horizontal, like the horizontal plains of the prairie. These nice, deep, earthy colors like reds and browns. When you look at the building, something's a bit off. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bays of window leading up until that clock tower. On the other side, there's only 5. Not symmetrical, but it was until 1930. That's when the city decided to tear down the side of that building just to make this street in front of us, LaSalle Street, wider than what it was. This is a very good example of how this city has grown, manipulating our surroundings. That's what we've done from the get-go. Like this land was not intended for buildings. It's all swampland, too soft. We created the grillage foundation as a way to spread out buildings away like a snowshoe. This river we also made wider. It was once 2 feet across. We never forget where we come from, and that's what this building does on the left-hand side. Pretty good job of that. The Builder's Building. 2 different sections. The original section directly off to the left, with those columns at the base of it dating back from 1924, done by Graham, Anderson, Probst, and White. And then you had that skinny portion that's added on in 1987, done by Skidmore, Owens, and Merrill. But you look at both sections and you can clearly separate the building into 3 pieces. A base, shaft, capital, just like a column. These 2 firms we talk about a lot, very active in the city. Another Graham, Anderson, Probst, and White design is this itty bitty little building here on the right hand side. That's a merchandising area. Back in 1930, this was the largest building in the world. Over 4 million square feet of space inside of here. Sits on 2 city blocks. First building ever to have its own stop on the elevated train system. First building ever to have its own zip code until 2008. And these green heads in front of the building are these busts of different merchants. All to scale. They're actually that big. They're really bad. Big hats back there. Up there, Montgomery Ward, Marshall Field. That second name may sound familiar. Macy's, originally called Marshall Fields. He's responsible for financing that. And I'll tell you a little something about him as we come back up the river. But on the right-hand side, you're gonna see some construction. So this land is called Wolf Point. The buildings are going to be called Wolf Point. 3 condos. There's one already created as Wolf Point West. 2 more are going to be built up, Wolf Point South, Wolf Point East. 3 buildings right here where all 3 branches of the Chicago River meet. Not a coincidence. That's contextualism, architecture that mimics its surroundings. So the main branch is what we started on. South branch is coming up here on the left-hand side. North branch swings over to the right. If you look at this from an aerial view, kind of looks like the letter Y. As you walk throughout the city, keep your eyes open. You're going to see this a lot. Side of traffic light boxes, electrical boxes, manhole covers for sewers. A lot of the city works. You see this emblem, it's a circle with a Y inside. And that represents this convergence because prior to the city becoming a city in 1837, you would have seen the first trading post behind us, and right next to it was a bar, and a bar on the left, and a bar on the right, and a boat that took you from bar to bar to bar to bar to bar. A floating bar crawl before we had a local government. And those are called priorities. Do you agree with that? We have a bar on board, and that is a segue. Lainey's your bartender. She has drinks for you. Beer, wine, soda, chips, pretzels. Go and see her at any point. Right-hand side, 150 North Riverside. We saw this building, the one that has that V shape to it, a very interesting design. The reason why is because train tracks sit right next to this building. It does not have a lot of land to deal with. It only takes up 20% of the lot, the footprint of the building. The base of the building is all granite, it's only 30 feet across. The first full floor starts 104 feet up. And the building hangs on either side by 43 feet, which creates a counterweight. That building has 16 caissons. Caissons, just think table legs, that dig down into the bedrock over 100 feet down. All of that works to keep that building standing. Sounds safe, but still a bit hesitant to go in there on a windy day. Probably sways, yeah? They thought about that. They have something called an inertial slosh dampening system. 12 water tanks full of water. Let's say a gust of wind starts to sway over to this side. The water sloshes to the other side. It oscillates, it finds an equilibrium, the building settles. In total, a foot of sway, 6 inches on either side. That's it. So that would be like a contemporary design, very new age. Hey! Over here on the left, this is definitely an old school right here, just in front of us, this beige building. It is my pleasure to introduce to you the Civic Opera Building. Dating back to 1930, designed at Grand Anderson Probst White. 1920s, the Roaring 20s, planes, trains, automobiles. So you have these buildings that are very streamlined. They look machine-made. So you have these pinstripes that kind of go up to the top. Along the side, you have the Greek masks of tragedy and comedy, trying to pay tribute to the fact that it's used as an opera. Still is today. Lyric opera is inside that building. And coming up on the right-hand side, we're going to have the Gateway Complex. So straight ahead of us, I can hear you. Okay, now I can. Right-hand side, this is Gateway 4. Oh, sorry, Gateway 1. All 4 of these buildings make up the Gateway Complex. So you have 1, 2, that white building, number 3, and then all the way down there, that's number 4. All 4 of these are done by Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill. We're going to take you through a little trip through time. So we start off with Gateway 1 and Gateway 2. We saw this type of architecture already. Black box modernism made famous by Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. This came about in the 50s after a 20-year hiatus in construction. So the last office building to be constructed here prior to the 50s was in 1934, and then we had a new building in 1955. Why was there that gap? Great Depression, World War II. Finally we get back on our feet. But still money's a little tight, right? So we're looking at our buildings and we're thinking, you know what, let's not try and make them. You use a building for to have people work inside, well, have exposed glass. So you have natural light entering. And you have this steel frame so the building doesn't fall down. This is the way to do things in the 50s and 60s. In the 1970s hit, architects grow a little bored. They want to kind of like add something on. So over here on the right-hand side, this white building, international style, this is Gateway 3. It still uses that concept of creating a building that's a box, but now you add some concrete onto the outside. Technology, as far as engineering goes, has advanced a lot. Now we can bend glass like never before. You have a lot of these curvy linear designs, so that curve in the building, that also kind of mimics the curve that we're taking right now along the river. The glass is reflective and also convex, pops out, looks like a mirage. And just in front of us, we go back in time to 1933. This gray building, beige building just in front of us. That's the old Chicago Post Office. Another design of Graham Anderson Probst. Same people responsible for the merchandise mart, which had its own zip code, are responsible for this post office that has cars driving straight through it. That's Congress Parkway just in front of us, which is also the start of the Eisenhower Expressway. It runs straight through here. Why would we need such a large building for mail? At the turn of the century, Chicago was a mail order catalog capital of the world. If you don't know too much about the mail order catalog industry, just think Amazon, but in print, same thing. And we had some of the biggest names here, like Sears Roebuck, Montgomery Ward, besides Mooker Cal Bessie. She goes out at night, 9 p.m. So it's darker than now, and she takes a lantern out with her, just kind of see what she was doing. Her Cal Bessie is strong wind that just fed that fire. In fact, the same day we had ours, Wisconsin had one. Peshtigo, Wisconsin had a wildfire that was even larger than this, but this is considered to be one of the largest urban fires in the history of the world. Coming up here on the right-hand side, we have some bridges. So I'll show you how the bridges operate. You can see how one side of the bridge has that concrete portion. Every bridge in the city operates in the same way. They're all trunnion bascule bridges. Bascule, French term meaning seesaw or teeter-totter. That's how they operate. So they use that concrete block. They do use an engine with as much power as that of one that you use for a Volkswagen Beetle. It's a lot of output. It's pretty much like concrete block does everything. It's gravity. It draws the bridge up and down. 37 functional bridges in the city. They all do operate if need be. And there's actually a vertical bridge a bit further down. So whereas all the bridges open either like that or like that, there's this one bridge, the entire thing goes up and down like that. Different type of bridge, that's a spirit bridge. So, Chinese folklore, let's say you're being chased by a spirit. You go onto a bridge much like this and you'll lose it because spirits don't like the color red, they can't go over water, and they can't turn. They can only go in straight lines. So Pac-Man lied to everyone. This is one of the better tours just because, as I said, the city is its best at night, and you're going to be treated to one of the best views of Chicago as we come back up this river. So get your cameras ready. While we make our way up the South Branch, I'm going to go ahead and just give you some time to get up if you want to, stretch your feet, use the backdrop of the city in your photos. Feel free to go use your phone.
엄마 그때 생각난다. 디즈니.
거기서 뺐었잖아.
We could go right to the American on Sunday, go to the town.
Yeah, that'd be sweet.
If you go down to the Art Institute of Chicago, it is rated one of the best museums in the world. Like every year it's in the top 5. We have the second largest collection of French Impressionist paintings, if that floats your boat. If you like street art and urban art, we have a couple of neighborhoods that are basically outdoor galleries. That's one of them. Wabash Arts Corridor. It's on Wabash Avenue. So it starts